Hello, I'm Alexis, and today I'm going to be talking to you about guest sourcing and booking. The first thing that we need to do is decide who our guests are. We can do that by outlining a set of parameters. So that can be industry, types of companies, company size, job titles, regions, revenue amounts, anything like that. Once you have that list set, we're ready to dive into our research. But remember that the more parameters and limits you put on your potential guests, the smaller your pool gets. It's time to find out where these guests are. So the first place that I like to look is, LinkedIn.
Hello, anybody home?
Set your search terms and find some quality people. The other place that you can look, conference lists. I love using conference lists. You know why? Because conference speakers want to speak. They are keen on talking about their areas of expertise. Whenever I reach out to conference speakers, they almost always say yes. Easy peasy, a lemon squeezy.
Squeeze the lemon.
The third way that I like to find guests, and this might be a little bit less obvious, is the up and coming and recently published book lists on Amazon. A recently or newly published author is going to want to share their information. Now it's time to start researching the guests. But before you do that, I like to set up a spreadsheet so that I can track everybody and keep track of all their information.
Long 7700, over.
Roger that. I'll need a minute on satellite visual, over.
I like to include their name, their job title, the company they work for, their LinkedIn link, contact information if we've got it, perhaps a quick little note about why you're inviting them to the show. And I add a status column so I can keep track of when I reached out to them. And then I like to track positive and negative responses, kind of keep everything straight, organized, concise, and it just makes my heart happy. Now it's time to start the outreach. It is time to butter those biscuits. You are going to want to prepare an outreach template so that you can kind of reuse outreach style across all of your guests. We can pepper in things to make it more personal for each guest. You could say something like, "Hey Alexis, I saw your recently published article where you discussed buttering biscuits.
And it's legit!
I would love to invite you to be a guest on my new show, Butter Those Biscuits, because I think my audience could learn a lot from you. Are you interested? Are you interested?" You notice how I ended with a question? If you end with a question, you are a lot more likely to get a response.
I'm Ron Burgundy.
Making them feel flattered, by making them feel a little famous, like, "You saw my article? You want me on your show?"
I'm kind of a big deal.
Now, granted, the response could still be no. Of course, we're not always going to have the opportunity to personalize the outreach, and that's okay. You might be wondering, those emails are way too short. I didn't tell them about the great company that's sponsoring the podcast. I didn't tell them anything about my career, and I didn't tell them any of the recent awards or accolades that our company has. Don't. That's not the time for that. It's not the time for you to brag on yourself. It's the time to make your invited guest feel flattered and feel interested in coming on your show.
How about a nice hot dog and a beer?
Keep it short, keep it sweet, and use language that's going to make them want to engage with you. Now remember, everyone on the planet is busy, and sometimes emails get overlooked, they get stuck in filters, and so that's why I like to do my outreach using an automated email sequence. Each of my sequences contains 3 to 5 emails, and honestly, I think that the 4-step sequence is kind of that sweet spot where I see a lot of responses. So the first email is just like the example I gave a little while ago. The second email is similar, and then I give a little bit more information like, "Hey Alexis, I really still think you'd be a great guest on my show. Did you know Alexis was a past guest? Want to join us?"
Join me, and I will complete your training.
And then they're like, "Oh, Alexis is a big name. They think I'm as big of a name as her. Of course I'm going to join the show." If that still didn't work, then we do the third email. "Hey Alexis, haven't heard back from you regarding being on the show. Can we set up a quick call to see if this opportunity makes sense for you?" At that point, you're kind of offering them to have a call. You're letting them know that you're not just assuming they want to do the show, and maybe they'll engage with you that way. And then the last email is what I like to call the breakup email. That's the email where I'm like, "Hey Alexis, I didn't get a response from my last 3 emails. I'm assuming that your schedule's too busy right now, but if it clears up down the road, we'd still love to have you on a guest of Buttering Biscuits."
I have to go.
this email works. Because somebody reads the email and they're like, well, she emailed me 3 times, but now she's saying she's not going to email me again, and I'm going to lose this opportunity. So once our research is done, our sequences are set, it's time to wait for those positive responses to come rolling in. This ends up being a numbers game, so the more people you reach out to, the more likely you're going to get people booked for the show. I recommend starting with at least reaching out to 10 people per week. You can definitely do more, especially if you want to get guests in queue quicker, but at least 10 per week, you should see guests start to come in. Once those yes responses start rolling in, it is time to get people booked because we want our show to be booked and busy.
Let's go get some barbecue and get busy.
And then I like to get them scheduled for a pre-interview. The pre-interview is a time for me to connect with the guest. We can talk about any initial questions they may have. They may have questions about the process. And then we can work on topic selection and identifying 3 to 5 bullet points that we can use to carve out the outline for the interview.
5, Lisa, 3.
If you're getting somebody who's from the conference circuit or a marketer or somebody who does a lot of speaking, you're in luck. They're gonna come with tons of ideas that they want to talk about, tons of topics that they're interested in, and you can have the briefest of conversations. They'll be like, I want to talk about this, this, and this, and you'll be like, okay, awesome, if it works. But of course, there are going to be guests who have never done, much public speaking, who don't have topics in mind, and who honestly feel like they don't have anything relevant to share. Now, of course, they're wrong about this, but we're going to have to prove them wrong. And this is where POV discovery comes into play.
POV discovery and what, why, how.
Using our POV discovery framework will help you draw engaging and authentic content out of literally anyone. And no matter what the goal of your podcast is, you should be striving to create authentic and engaging content because it is pleasing for the listener, for your guest. Once they hear how eloquent they sound, they're going to want to share it. And whoever else you want to use your podcast to impress, you'll actually have impressive content to share. Once the pre-interview is done, it is time to book that interview. I strongly recommend attempting to get them to book while you're still on the phone with them, because if you try to send them a link later or ask them to send you some dates and times that work, the back and forth tends to just really, really, really slow things down.
Really, really, really ridiculously.
So if you can get them to commit while you're on the phone, offer them a couple of dates, that really is the best way to go. Once you get the date and time confirmed, be aware of time zones. You need to prepare the invite. And remember, it's your job to make your guest as comfortable and as prepared as possible. So when you make this invite, you should include all the relevant details. Zoom information, whether or not you're going to expect them to turn on their camera, a backup phone number to call in case there's technical difficulties, who to contact if they need to reschedule last minute, and of course the outline of the proposed topic and talking points. This gives them something to reference, and it has all the information clear as day right on their calendar so that there's no questions.
Do you have any other questions for me, counselor?
Many of your guests will have never done anything like this before, and it's natural to feel a bit nervous, especially they might be speaking on behalf of their company or something like that, and they are really going to want to do their best, and you need to ease those jitters. It's your job to make sure that your guest is comfortable and prepared for the interview. Remember, a lot of people joining your show will have never done anything like this before. They might be feeling a little bit nervous or a little bit uncomfortable. So I like to remind them, like, hey, it's not live TV. If you say something that you didn't mean to say, our amazing audio engineer will take care of it. At the end of the day, this is supposed to be fun, and it's supposed to be mutually beneficial. They're supposed to get some great content out of it, and so are you. Once everything is booked, because I'm a control freak, I like to track everything in my handy dandy spreadsheet. And honestly, why wouldn't you want to do that? No, I'm just kidding. Track it how you want to. That's what I like to do. And additionally, I think it's a best practice to remember to send your guest a reminder the week of the interview. We talked about who we want to have on our show. We talked about how to find them, how to track them, how to butter their biscuits, how to do the pre-interview, the POV discovery, booking, and reminders. So we are good to go. We are ready to start inviting guests to the show. But all of the things I mentioned kind of happened as if everything was going swimmingly. Yes, responses were rolling in, everybody wants to do the show, nobody's ghosting us, and honestly, that's not the reality. Here are some of my pro tips.
The only way to know where you stand with someone is to look into their eyes, right?
If you are not getting as many positive responses as you hoped for, bookings are not coming in, people are maybe not responding at all, you gotta get creative with your outreach. Remember what I mentioned? Those emails can sometimes not make it through. Or sometimes people view the email and think it's spam. They might not understand that you're a real person. So to make it a little more personal, one of the tools I like to use is called BombBomb. With BombBomb, you can film a video of yourself right from your email. It embeds it into the email, so when the person opens their email, they already see your face and they can see that you're talking to them.
You talking to me?
Honestly, that email goes a long way. Like, people seeing that video, I've gotten great responses from sending video outreach. Another way to get creative with your outreach is to invite people on LinkedIn. When you invite them to connect, do not put anything in the message. Just invite them to connect. Don't send them one of those, messages, because a lot of times those seem like somebody's using like a LinkedIn tool and nobody wants to be on the other end of that. Once they accept your connection, you can send them a voice note through the LinkedIn app. And I love voice notes. I love sending voice notes. I love receiving voice notes. It's a way to personally connect without having to carve out the time for a call. I don't always have time for a call, especially when it's something that doesn't really need to be talked about in real time. The potential guest is like, oh, they must really want me, and they will likely respond to you. Other things that I've done to get responses is slid into the Twitter DMs. I've messaged people on Instagram, any place that I can get to them that's a bit more personal, where they can see like, oh, a real person did this. It's not just, an email campaign. Another problem that comes up from time to time are the ghosters. Nobody likes a ghost.
Torso apparition, and it's real.
Do they? I mean, I don't. Maybe Casper, but whatever. Anyways, this happens where sometimes someone will write back to you and be like, yes, of course, I would love to do the show. Send me more info. And then as you send more info, as you invite them to book the call, they ghost you. But what's even worse is when you get somebody booked. You've gone through POV discovery. You have a topic. You have talking points. And then it's the day of the interview and they never show up. Oftentimes when this happens, I find that it's because the guest did not feel adequately prepared. So if you go through with everything I mentioned and your guest feels confident and strong about doing the show, this likely won't happen, but people do have other things that come up. So what I like to do when I find out that, the guest didn't make it, I send an email, a kind email, even if I'm a little annoyed, where I'm like, hey, I noticed that you weren't able to make it to our scheduled interview today. I would love to get you rescheduled. Do not ask them what happened. It's not our business. And it doesn't matter. All we want is to get them rebooked for the interview. And then, of course, if they've had some kind of emergency and they're like, hey, this is not a good time, blah, blah, blah. Like, okay, is it okay if I circle back with you in a month or, what have you? And usually they'll say yes, and then set a reminder for yourself and leave them be to tend to their business. And the last tip that I can leave you with is that tenacity is key. Do not get discouraged that people don't respond to you. Do not worry that you're getting a lot of no responses. Just keep doing the outreach. I cannot even tell you guys how many people have emailed me after, the third or fourth email and been like, honestly, I thought you were spam, or I don't have the time for this, or I didn't really want to, but your tenacity piqued my interest and now I've got to learn more. And of course, once you've got them to say that, it is time to convince them to join the show by buttering those biscuits.